Hello everyone and welcome to episode 9 of KERVCast. I can only apologise for being away for so long, but here we are, we're back and we're ready to go. And what better way to return the series than with Petra Brown. Petra, welcome to the podcast. Hello, how are you?
I'm really good,
Fantastic.
really excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
It's good to have you on. And obviously
you.
starting off the series again, coming back.
I know.
Who could I think
What a
of
guest
better
to have,
on?
right?
I know, exactly, right. So we'll start off with the listeners and viewers who don't know much about you.
Okay.
So give us a little bit of a background into you, your role at Curve, and obviously your role just as a whole.
So I've been in recruitment for a long time. Started just over 14 years ago. Typical recruitment roles, contingency, just really the kind of, filling roles, job descriptions, which was great at the time, but over the time, I guess it evolved more into strategic consulting role, working with a lot of private equity businesses and being involved in a lot more strategic growth through SME market and the businesses in private equity through my last companies, and opening up my own recruitment business, which is very exciting.
Fantastic. How are you finding that so far?
Oh, I love it. It's been on the cards for quite some time. I've been playing with the idea for quite some time. And I guess Curve Capital has definitely kicked me in the right direction to be able to do it. I guess we always feel that we're never ready, but you never be ready for that. So it's been absolutely fantastic. A lot of work, a lot of hard work, but a lot of support, which is brilliant.
Fantastic. Obviously, for those looking at potentially getting into that, the roles that you have, what key milestones do you think in your career can you potentially highlight that could give a little bit of inspiration to people maybe looking towards your role or thinking, I could do something like that?
Yes. I guess the milestones are predominantly being able to do what I like to do, which is recruitment. I've always loved recruitment, but being able to turn it towards that strategic and consultative approach rather than just dealing with job description and a job at a time. I have worked with businesses looking at their business plan, growth, and really advising them on how they should grow the business and what sectors they should bring in and what really brings ultimately the revenue going forward. And then I guess the other milestone is opening XCB, which is also named after my son. So that is another baby I'm now going to grow.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, a proud moment for you.
100% proud moment, yes.
Absolutely. So today we're going to speak about a couple of different topics.
Okay.
We're looking at obviously the VC business models and female leadership, which I'm really excited to speak about also. But first we'll crack on with talent acquisition.
Okay.
So how do you see the current landscape of talent acquisition evolving?
Yeah, talent acquisition has changed over the last definitely 4 or 5 years post-COVID hugely. And it is always one of those sectors, if the economy is not doing well, it is one of the sectors that have been cut down. However, I think with AI coming into the economy and looking at how that can help, providing we still need to grow businesses strategically and looking at the revenue rather than just aggressively bringing people into the businesses just because the revenue is there. We need to make sure that they add the skills that we're looking at and ultimately achieving the growth that business is planning to achieve and fits in with their goals ultimately going forward. But AI is definitely helping us to, in my opinion, concentrate on that really relationship building and really understanding how skills and the cultural fit is going to help rather than just looking at applications. So as long as we obviously use it correctly, I think that human touch needs to stay there, which is just ultimately helping us. But talent acquisition or rec to reg or any recruitment, it's ultimately the same. We just need to talk to people and understand their goals going forward.
Have the challenges for businesses then in finding talent shifted in recent years?
I think the talent is shifting all the time because everything is changing and ultimately every business is changing. Whether we are bringing new sectors, whether we are looking at different strategies, and a lot of businesses are ultimately looking at different tools that can help our jobs. But talent stays the same because ultimately we still need to bring people on. I think it's really important to really building talent pipeline in any business rather than just then dealing with we need someone immediately. We need to nurture that talent and really explore the right people. The people are going to bring the cultural fit, but more importantly, add within the cultural fit rather than just fit in. So I think that entrepreneurship in talent bringing into the current climate, into any SME businesses is really important.
Absolutely, absolutely. In startups and VC businesses then, what would you say are the best practices for balancing speed and quality in the talent acquisition process?
Building the right pipeline. As I said, it's dealing with the recruitment strategically rather than just dealing with it when there is a need. So having the right consultant to deal with and understanding your business goals and having the relationship with the consultant in the market who understands your business. I guess from my previous roles, I knew all the businesses that I have dealt with inside out, and that's not just the sectors they deal with, but the cultural fit, cultural add, the changes they might go through, the sectors they want to bring. And therefore, it was a continuous conversation about the talent coming up, which will bring value to the business growth. And really focusing on adaptable individuals, so people that can fit in that entrepreneurial mindset, because all SMEs are evolving really quickly, and therefore that person who we're going to bring on board. And also looking at the services. So rather than just filling in a role or just bringing that individual, is offering different services, how we can help with the businesses going forward.
You talk about that adaptability.
Yes.
How much influence does that have in that process then? Obviously, you're saying about SMEs and whatnot. Is that quite an important factor, would you say?
I think it is an important factor because people do need to adapt to different cultures and different fits of businesses, because just because it's an SME business doesn't mean they are all the same. They're all trying to achieve different things, some of them trying to grow quicker than the others. So I think being adaptive to, and we keep going on about the economy, but I don't think it's just with that. I think it's with understanding where that business is going and understanding their goal and strategy, and not just being able to adapt, but also really add value to that business going forward. So having ideas to consult with the founders, to consult with the directors about their own career progression, as well as ultimately understanding where the business is going and where they're adding value to that business going forward.
You mentioned it before about that cultural fit versus skill set.
Yes.
How much weight would you put on each, specifically for those businesses building teams who are rapidly scaling?
I think when we talk about cultural fit, it is about cultural add. Because I do think it's important bringing people in rather than just fitting them in with what we've got. If we're just fitting people in, the company is never going to grow. As I said, we need people that are going to continuously add to the business and bring new ideas. And I think it's really important because few years back, I guess all we concentrated was on skill set, but skill set can be taught. You can't teach a person to add value or fit within the business, but we can definitely teach them the skill set.
So essentially, it's not just about that cultural fit then, it's about looking at the long-term plan in terms of what can they add culturally to this business.
100%. And I think people that are fitting in culturally and more importantly adding value culturally will then learn the right skill set, because we can find people that've got 100% of the skill set and are high-performing billers, but it doesn't mean they are in with the vision of the business.
Right.
So if we bring people that understand the business growth, we can then teach them the skills that we need. And sometimes it's actually easier to bring people with a bit of a less experience, depends what we're looking at, but also team leaders who really have got the entrepreneurial mindset is important.
What strategies would you recommend to businesses looking to attract and retain that top talent within highly competitive industries?
I think it's important, as I said, to get the right consultant in place and have a really good relationship with a consultative business rather than the old saying rec to rec. I think it's important that any rec to rec business you are dealing with have an idea where your business is going, not today, not tomorrow, but next 18 months, 24 months, 5 years, in order to bring not people that you are looking for now, but people where your vision is going. So if the business, as an example, or the consultant that you're working with, have an understanding that right now you are dealing with a certain sector, but the consultant needs to understand and really give you that strategic advice that this is an evolving sector, whether it's whatever sector that can be, but bring you people that are then going to bring the value, not just in the revenue and culture, but ultimately whatever the strategy is towards the end that will help you to get there.
Absolutely. I think from this discussion so far, I think a lot of what is placed on this is long-term goals. Not goals in terms of a long-term plan for this individual, in terms of what can they offer going forward. They have to have a plan for that, would you say?
I think retention in SME businesses is really important, and that's why I keep saying long term, because bringing people into SME businesses that are looking to grow, we want to retain the people, and therefore we need to offer them a lot more than just a financial package. And that is ultimately about progression and that future plan and how they're going to fit in with the growth of the business.
Absolutely. So we'll now move on a little bit about working within the VC model. Obviously, for these VC businesses, there is that expectation of rapid growth. I think in the first instance, what would you suggest for businesses and entrepreneurs to meet those expectations, but also managing that sustainable growth?
I think it's about defining what good growth looks like and really understanding what growth you're trying to achieve, and that's by putting revenue goals in and then fit that is with the right hiring. It's also avoiding over hiring early, just because a lot of VCs will obviously give the budget in there to hire, but make sure you hire with the growth and you hire strategically rather than just because the budget is there, and make sure that you're hiring the right people that are, again, going to add value to the business rather than just have the skill set. And also, I think it's quite important to invest in the leadership early, because providing you've got the right leadership and building the foundation of a leadership, then it will be much easier to then bring people underneath them to understanding where that business is going.
Absolutely. What role do you think that operational support systems have, just like the one at Curve?
Yes.
I know, I'm just putting a little one out there.
Yes.
It's like the one at Curve. How much influence does that have in a business's success within a VC model?
Well, I would say hugely, especially for me. I mean, operational support overall has been not predominant thing why I also managed to open my own business, but I wouldn't be able to do it without it. I wouldn't even know where to start. So having all that white noise taken away from me and knowing that there is someone who I can call if I've got an issue, or having everything in place for the business to ultimately grow in the way it should, and not dealing with any of it, it's absolutely hugely advantageous.
It's good because, I mean, you can now experience that as obviously an entrepreneur now. I mean, how has that felt for you to have that sort of backing and support?
It's been blissful. I'm not quite sure the operational team is going to say the same, but yeah, I mean, the first couple of weeks when we were launching the business, there has been things that I've not even realised that needed to be sorted. So that was a very, very new world to me. And it is also knowledge that I'm gaining now and learning, obviously, going forward to understand what that takes operationally running business, rather than just looking at the revenue and growth and bringing people in. So for me, it has definitely been very, very important.
Insightful, I guess, at the same time. I think that's probably a lot of what being an entrepreneur is about, I guess, just learning more and more about potentially the operational side of things. Obviously, you said about revenue and stuff there, but that's just the surface, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time, perhaps whether it's myself, a lot of people out there don't realise that being a successful person working, or a successful recruiter working for a business, is very different to running your own business, because the knowledge just goes beyond to what we used to do on a daily basis. But yeah, having that operational support has been definitely blissful.
So which performance metrics would you say are most critical for these early stage VC businesses who are trying to track and prioritise certain goals and aims?
I think the main matrix to concentrate on is revenue per employee. So when we're bringing the employees in, is understanding where the revenue is going to come from. And our hires actually driving the business growth, because whether we like it or not, whether we might like people or not, they have to bring the revenue into the business. And also is time to hire versus quality of hire. So just because we need to hire doesn't mean we need to do it immediately. Really take your time to understanding why are we hiring, because fast isn't always better. And retention rates. So understanding a strong employer brand keeps people engaged long term, and understanding why these people want to join our business, and understanding our branding, and whether they understand where we're going with it.
Yeah, I guess, again, just making sure that they're really on board, really.
Absolutely,
with that.
and we keep going back to that, but especially in SME market where you will also want to make a difference. You don't want to join a business where you're just going to become an employee. You want to feel like you're adding value to the business, they're adding value to your progression, and therefore everyone is trying to achieve the same goals, which is growth, branding, revenue, and your own progression going forward.
Absolutely. What are some of the biggest challenges then that you find of VC businesses face in the industry?
The biggest challenges, I think, what I have definitely experienced in the last 3 years is probably scaling too fast without having the right infrastructure. And especially post-COVID, there has been so many recruitment businesses that just popped up, a one-man band, or just because they thought they're the right, good recruiter, I'm going to open up my own business. And a lot of the time they failed because they haven't had the right infrastructure, this solid strategy, how they're going to grow the business, the operational support that they need going forward. And they should always concentrate on the strong foundation before they try to grow that business.
How important is that strong foundation then? Obviously, you just mentioned it there. Like you said, that needs that infrastructure first in order to actually grow, instead of just going for scaling straight away as fast as you can.
Well, I don't think ultimately any foundation, if you're building a house, if you haven't got a foundation, you ain't going to build a house.
That's it.
Or you're not going to build a house. So if you haven't got a foundation, a business plan, understanding where your own goals are, what is it you're trying to achieve and why you're doing it, you're never going to grow that business, because you will then, with a blank canvas, just continuously changing your mind how you're going to do it. Which, if you've got strong foundation, what is it you're trying to achieve, put everything on paper and have the right leadership around you, then together you can obviously achieve your own goals and your dreams.
I think you might have answered my next question in terms of how do you overcome the challenges, but is there any other ways that they can overcome maybe the other things that you've mentioned as well?
I think exploring the market and speaking to the right people to understand who you are and why you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to do. And I think really working with people that are supporting you in your own dreams rather than telling you what to do is really important, because if you are opening your own business, it's like when I opened up XCB, it was about what I'm trying to achieve, and having people behind me to help me to build my business rather than to tell me how to build my business is really important. And that difference can, those two things can make a huge difference going forward.
Yeah. So that help instead of the being told what to do. Is there a big difference in that, would you say?
It is, because ultimately, if you're opening up your own business, you've got a clear understanding what you're trying to achieve, and you, I would imagine, already have a business plan. What is it you're doing? So if you have a leadership around you to help you to scale that business, telling you what to do, you might as well be employed. You have to be able to challenge your private equity backers, and they have to be able to challenge you, and somewhere in the middle is the right way.
Yeah. Would you say that not being sort of afraid to challenge that? Because I think some people might be a little bit cautious about doing that, about maybe challenging what the VC investors are saying maybe. Would you advise that people do that?
100%. Yeah. I think if you challenging, whether it's private equity backers or anyone, you are clearly doing it for the right reason, because you are passionate about what you do and you believe that if it makes sense, do it. If it doesn't, then you will be told otherwise. But by challenging doesn't mean you are arguing. By challenging, it means that you either understanding your passion about what you're trying to achieve, or otherwise, if they tell you that it doesn't make sense, then you have a then clear understanding why it doesn't make sense. So you're still learning throughout the process. Challenges just means that you are looking at what works and what doesn't.
Absolutely. So we'll move on now a little bit about female leadership then. Obviously yourself, Petra, being a female leader, now a female entrepreneur.
Yes, I am.
Your own business. Yes, you are now. Absolutely. What challenges would you say have you potentially faced, maybe as a female, obviously in the industry, and getting to where you are today in that role, would you say?
I think in this market, being a female entrepreneur, especially in recruitment, there is the perception that you have to continuously prove your credibility. But I think if you prove and stay true to yourself, the results will come through it, and then you will be as successful as anyone in the market, really.
Fantastic, yeah. I think, obviously, there are barriers, unfortunately, to women and females coming into that entrepreneurial roles and leadership roles. what would you say then? I think you've sort of touched on it a little bit there about being true to yourself. To those aspiring maybe to become entrepreneurs as females, or looking to grow their own ventures, start their own ventures. What would you say in terms of advice to those individuals?
I think my biggest advice would be don't wait for anyone's permission. Just do it. Mm-hmm. The time will never be right. Mm-hmm. Just go and do it and work it out yourself and get yourself surrounded by the right people and get it done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What can businesses, investors or leaders do better to support those females who are potentially going for those opportunities and making it more inclusive for them?
So again, it goes down to if you've got the right goals and you've got the right leadership, then don't stop there. You can definitely get the right support. But I think the support and leadership is really important. Mm-hmm. I think that flexible working is really important because women do have to multitask all the time. Mm-hmm. So the flexible working is really important to me, and I'm sure there will be a lot of females that agree with me. And I think funding and investment tailored to female-led businesses to a certain point, really understanding, because our thought process is probably more sometimes on the emotional side. Mm-hmm. And I think, especially for me, working with Curve Capital, growing XCB, is kind of understanding, take that emotional side out, because this is about business, because I take everything really personally. So that's definitely my challenge, where if something is not working for me, to have the leadership around me to say it's not you, everybody's facing the same challenges, take the emotion out and let's look at it strategically. So I think those three things are really important.
I think though, from an emotional side, it can have its benefits, and I think having that empathetic potential side, having that support system, but you being that support system as well. I think obviously you mentioned and touched on there about, having that support framework from operations maybe, but also from that empathetic side, do you think also maybe? Yeah,
and I call it emotion because, as I said, this is my other baby now. I'm growing. So of course I'm going to be really emotionally attached. And it's not just a case that it's my business and it's got my son's initials in there. And therefore I take it really personally because I want it to make success. But sometimes I take it too emotionally if something is not going right way. So having the right people around me to just make that strategy clearer where we're going, it's really important. But the emotion is absolutely important in there, because if you're not emotional about your own business, it means you're not passionate.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's the whole passion side of it, which you did touch on before.
100%, yes.
How important is passion then for that? I mean,
if you haven't got passion, you're never going to succeed. You've got to be passionate about everything you do in life and do it 110%. So being almost 17 years in recruitment now, clearly there is still a lot of passion because I've now taken into a different direction, but the passion is same. And ultimately it's about, helping people and talking to people and understanding how we can help them. So the passion couldn't be probably more important.
Mm-hmm. I think it's an interesting what you say there about sort of the passion being the same. So obviously you've had passion for the job you've had before, but now going into a business role, are they two different kinds of sort of passion, or is it just the exact same sort of feeling of drive that you've got?
I think the passion changes slightly because my first 8 years in recruitment, I was, the typical let's make money recruiter. And then the last 11 years being a mum, the passion stays the same, but probably evolves slightly differently because you're doing it for your future, for your family future. So life changes, everything changes, and the passion changes slightly. But as long as the passion is there, it doesn't matter how it is there. As long as you're enjoying it, then keep doing it.
It's another thing then about that support framework. I guess your family as well, having that as well.
100%.
How much does that influence, obviously, what you're doing as an entrepreneur now, probably more so. How much does that influence then?
Well, that is what gets me out of the bed and drives me on a daily basis. Being a mum and, supporting my son, it's extremely important. And ultimately, we are doing it for them to be able to either pass it on or, I'm not sure whether my son will want to stay in the recruitment. If he does, great. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But what I do want him to see is that mum has always really worked hard for him to have a good education, have good schooling, and really have the good work ethic. We don't get anything for free. We've got to work, and I really want to drum that into him on a daily basis.
Absolutely. You can get him a job at your place now.
I might.
Well, usually, Petra, I will wrap up with, as it's coming towards the end of the podcast now, I'll wrap up with one question that's sort of one piece of advice. But I think potentially you could have other bits of advice for the different topics that we've spoke about today. So potentially talent acquisition, the businesses within the VC model, and potential female leadership. So I'll ask you, if you can, obviously give potentially an advice for each piece of that. So we'll start with talent acquisition for obviously those looking at the process. Maybe what one piece of advice would you give those people?
I think the piece of advice I would give is, as I mentioned throughout the conversation, get yourself a relationship with a consultative and strategic recruiter. Don't look at just a rec-to-rec company. Don't get a lot of rec-to-rec businesses to look at your business where you're going to continuously repeat yourself. What is it you're looking for? Build a relationship with a person who has an empathy for your business and what is it you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. And what about those businesses or entrepreneurs who are working within the VC model? Maybe any specific advice or tips for them guys?
Research the market, meet everyone who you're going to work with. I think it's almost like an involuntary marriage we're going into, because when you believe that the people that you surround yourself with are going to grow your business with you and understand your goals and dreams, you've got to meet everyone and they've got to be right for you and you've got to be right for them. So ultimately, I think it's about people rather than the money. Mm-hmm. And if you have a good rapport with the people who are going to be backing you up for next few years to grow the business and achieve the end goal, then that's the right way forward. It's not about just the funding.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think most importantly, given you are such a now role model as a female leader, what advice would you give to those females potentially who are looking to get into business or as in a leadership role or starting their own venture? What one piece of advice would you say to those?
I think it's the same as I said earlier. Don't wait for anyone's permission to do it. Don't look at all the obstacles in your life why the time is not right now. Just go and do it, and make sure that you are doing what you want to do regardless. There is definitely plenty of support out there for all the female entrepreneurs. If anything, I found it quite a blissful process because I think it's really supported now for females entrepreneurs coming into the market, because we can multitask on a daily basis. But definitely don't stop just because your life changes with family. Don't put obstacles in your way.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all the questions I've got, Petra.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on today. It's been really insightful, and I'm sure it's going to be a cracker of an episode for the first one back.
I hope so.
It will be, absolutely. So thank you very much, Petra. Cheers.
Thank you for having me.
I know.